I also put an advanced Fourier system on the main hallway chalkboard. This is correct. Who did this? Nimish?
No way.
So without further ado, come forward, silent rogue, and receive thy prize. My colleagues and I have conferred, and there is a problem on the board right now that took us more than 2 years to prove. Sorry. Oh, you're a clever one. What's your name?
A 20-year-old young man named Will Hunting is sitting at home reading a book when his friend Chuckie arrives, like he does every day, in his car, and takes Will with him. Hanging out with Chuckie had become part of Will's daily routine. At MIT in the United States, a famous mathematics professor and Nobel Prize winner named Professor Gerald Lambeau tells his students during class that he has written a difficult math problem on the hallway blackboard, and whoever solves it will have their name printed on the front page of the MIT newspaper, which will bring them huge fame and countless opportunities. He explains that the students whose names have appeared in MIT before have all gone on to become great people who accomplished big things, and now the professor had high hopes that his current students would achieve something extraordinary. Meanwhile, there was a janitor at the university who, while cleaning the hallway, notices the math problem written on the board and memorizes it instantly in just one glance. Even though he has no idea about the professor's challenge or any reward, he goes home and starts solving the problem. And the next day, during cleaning, he quietly writes his solution on the board. When the professor discovers someone has solved the problem, he rushes there in shock because the answer is absolutely correct. Believing that one of his brilliant students must have written it, he asks everyone who solved it, but no one knows that it was actually Will who wrote the solution, so the professor feels a bit disappointed. The next day, Will is watching a baseball game with his friends when he spots a guy who used to beat him up badly during childhood. Will doesn't say anything at that moment, but later, with his friends, he attacks that guy's group and brutally beats him up. The police arrive and try to stop Will, but he even raises his hand against the officers, so they arrest him and take him away. During Professor Lambeau's next class, everyone wants to know who the genius was that solved the math problem. Standing in front of a classroom full of students, the professor asks the genius to come forward, but no one steps up. So to find out who it is, he writes a new problem on the board, one even harder than the first. So difficult that it took him and his colleagues 2 years to solve it. The court gives Will a hearing date for the following week and releases him, and he returns to MIT and starts solving the new problem. But this time, the professor catches him, and before he can confront him, Will runs away. When the professor checks the solution, he is stunned because the problem that took him 2 years of hard work was solved effortlessly by Will. The professor now understands that Will is a true genius. That night, Will lies to his friends, telling them he got kicked out of MIT. He doesn't fully reveal the truth that he voluntarily quit working there. Later, they all go to a club where Chuckie tries to impress 2 girls, but a snobby guy shows up, proud of his knowledge, and tries to embarrass Chuckie by asking difficult questions. To protect his friend, Will steps in and gives an incredible answer with book references and page numbers, leaving the guy speechless. Will then mocks him, saying he wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars in college for information that he got for free from library books. A girl sitting nearby is impressed by Will and asks him to meet her again. Professor Gerald Lambeau had already learned about Will and went straight to his court hearing, where it was revealed that Will had a criminal record involving assault charges and car theft, though he was smart enough to escape punishment every time. But this time, he had attacked police officers, so the judge decided not to show mercy and sentenced him to jail with a $50,000 bail. This was bad news for Will, but for Professor Lambeau, it was a golden opportunity. The professor convinced the judge to release Will under his supervision, but only if Will agreed to two conditions. First, he would work with the professor on advanced mathematics research, and second, he would attend therapy sessions until he improved, as the therapist's report would be required to get his bail approved. And until then, Will would stay under the professor's watch. Will agreed to the math research, but when he heard about therapy, he laughed and refused, though he really had no other option, so he had to accept both conditions. Later, Will solved another difficult math problem and proved to Professor Lambeau that he wasn't using tricks. He truly was a genius, which made the professor proud. Since Will was going to meet a therapist the next day, he read the therapist's book beforehand and gathered information to mess with him, and during the session, Will exposed the therapist's secrets, causing him to panic and refuse further treatment. The next therapist tried to hypnotize him, but that also failed because Will was too smart and no therapist could handle him. Professor Lambeau realized Will wouldn't be controlled so easily, so he reached out to his old friend, Sean Maguire, a psychology professor at a community college, and told him Will was a troubled kid who didn't understand his own worth, a true genius unaware of his value. After hearing this, Sean agreed to take on Will's therapy and called him to his office the next day. Knowing Will's intelligence, Professor Lambeau warned Sean to handle him carefully. Will arrived, ready to break his new therapist as well. The professor left, and Sean began talking to Will alone. Sean's office was filled with books, which Will immediately mocked while speaking rudely, trying to provoke Sean and ruin the session by making him lose his temper. Sean understood this was just one of Will's games, so he stayed calm and did not react. So with no other way left to provoke him, Will calls Sean's wife characterless, and now Sean, furious, warns him to watch his mouth. And when Will realizes Sean is disturbed and that his wife is his weak spot, he again talks badly about her, which makes Sean snap as he grabs Will tightly by the throat and threatens to kill him if he ever says anything wrong about his wife again. Will defends himself, saying the therapy session time is over, and Sean lets him go, and Will is happy he defeated another therapist. But Sean is sad, and seeing his sadness, the professor understands that Will won't continue therapy, but Sean doesn't give up and insists on continuing next week. That night, Will goes on a date with Skylar, where he discovers she comes from a rich family and is studying at a university. And Skylar really likes Will, too. Their date goes great, and they start liking each other more. During the next session, Sean takes Will to a park and says he was very angry about his misbehavior that day, but soon realized Will is just a kid because real life is far more beautiful than books, especially love, which Will has never understood since he's only read about life and never lived it. And if he had lived it, he'd know that being with someone you love gives a happiness no book can describe. But he wouldn't know because he's never loved anyone that much. Sean's wife had cancer and spent her last 2 months in a hospital bed holding Sean's hand, and Sean still loves her deeply, which is why he got so angry when Will spoke wrong about her. And he tells Will, Sean says Will is an orphan, and he understands that pain, but asks if Will would like it if Sean mocked his orphanhood by quoting some book, because no book can reveal what spending real time with someone can. And Will has no idea what he said that day. And with that, Sean walks away. Will realizes his mistake, but still has a lot of ego. So the next day, he goes to work at a construction site with Chuckie, and in the evening, he calls Skylar. She answers, but due to hesitation, he hangs up without saying a word. In the third session, Will remains completely silent, and seeing him quiet, Sean also stays silent and gives no reaction, knowing that Will is still playing mind games, so the entire session passes in long silence, as Sean knows he has to wait until Will genuinely wants to talk. Professor Lambeau is amazed because Will does incredible work with him on math research, solving problems that even experienced mathematicians haven't cracked for years, and to Lambeau, it feels nothing short of a miracle. During Will's fourth therapy session with Sean, he finally breaks his silence and tells a joke, which Sean had been waiting for as a chance to connect, so he immediately asks about Will's girlfriend. Will explains he's dating Skylar, who is completely different from other girls, but he doesn't talk to her much on calls because he feels everything is already perfect, and he's afraid too much talking might ruin it. He loves Skylar, but fears that if she finds out he's an orphan, she might stop meeting him. Sean tells him nobody is perfect. Everyone has flaws along with strengths, and then starts talking about his late wife. He says his wife had this weird habit of farting loudly in her sleep, and once she farted so hard that even their dog woke up scared, and she herself woke up too, which makes Will burst out laughing. Sean then says it's been 2 years since she died, and he still misses those little things about her. He adds that he also has many flaws that others might find strange, but his wife loved him for them, because when you truly love someone, you love both their strengths and weaknesses. Neither Will nor Skylar is perfect, but if they love each other, they can be perfect for one another. Sean's words start affecting Will deeply. Will jokingly tells Sean to get married again, but Sean refuses, saying he loved his wife so much he can't replace her with anyone else. Will wants to keep talking, but Sean says time's up, and this is the first time a therapist ended the session, because until now, Will was always the one announcing when time was over, making this Sean's first real win. Not through psychology books, but through life experience. Will then asks Sean how he fell in love, and Sean explains he once went to watch a legendary baseball game with his friends, a historic World Series matchup so big they even slept outside the gate overnight just to get tickets, and they actually got them. While waiting at a bar for the game to start, he saw a girl named Nancy, and as he tells Will about the match, describing the packed stadium, the intense competition, and the roaring, excited crowd, Will gets hyped and says he can't believe Sean got tickets and watched that game live. But Sean shocks him by saying he didn't watch it at the stadium. He stayed at the bar with Nancy and later caught the game on TV. Upset, Will asks how he could skip such an epic game after waiting all night just for some random girl he didn't even know, thinking Sean must be joking, but Sean says he's serious. When he first saw Nancy, he fell in love at first sight and didn't want to miss that precious moment for anything, so he stayed with her because she wasn't just any ordinary girl. He eventually married her and spent the best 18 years of his life with her, and it was through Nancy that he truly understood the real meaning of love. So he never regretted skipping that game, nor is he sad even after Nancy's death. Hearing this, Will becomes calm, and Sean's words inspire him to open up more to Skylar, making their relationship even stronger. During this time, Will introduces Skylar to his friends, but he doesn't tell her the truth that he's an orphan, especially because many companies have started offering him job opportunities to hire him. So he meets with Professor Sean to quickly prepare his report and help him plan a career path. But Sean says that Will still needs time, and he believes that Will doesn't want degrees, medals, or fame, because his true purpose in life is something else, and if they try to pressure him, he'll run away forever. Despite this, when Professor Lambeau asks Will to attend job interviews, Will sends his friend Chuckie in his place, who ends up taking money from the interview staff and walking out. Since Skylar was planning to move to California for her future, she asks Will to come with her so they can live together, but Will refuses. Even though he deeply loves her, there's still insecurity inside him, as he believes she'll eventually leave him and marry someone rich, which is why he can't fully trust her. After listening to Will, Skylar starts to think he's a coward who doesn't want to step out of his comfort zone, and this leads to an argument between them. Skylar says she knows he's been lying about having 12 brothers, but she still loves him anyway, which triggers Will. And in anger, he confesses the truth that he has no family, he's an orphan, and the caretaker at the place he lived used to torture him, burn cigarettes on his skin, beat him brutally while drunk, and the deep scars from that torture are still on his body. Skylar tries to calm him down because she genuinely wants to help him, but Will, filled with rage, tells her he doesn't love her and breaks her heart before walking away. After leaving Skylar, Will's personal life becomes even more tangled, and feeling upset, he even starts arguing with Professor Lambeau because now he doesn't want to work on the math research anymore. Even though he's a genius, he's still not focused on his life. Seeing Will's exceptional skills, he receives a job offer from the National Security Agency to work as a code breaker, which he later mentions to Sean during their next session. Sean knows that Will has never truly opened his heart to anyone or shared his pain, and he believes that unless that buried pain is released, Will never be able to live a normal life. Sean asks him if there's anyone close to his heart, and Will mentions his friend Chuckie, but Sean says that while Chuckie could crack someone's skull for him, he can't understand the depth of Will's emotions. Then Will mentions the names of some philosophers and writers, but Sean reminds him that they've all been dead for years. Sean asks Will what he truly loves and what he wants to do with his life, which is a straightforward question, but Will is so mentally stuck that he has no answer. Sean tells him that he's extremely talented and his gift is extraordinary, but instead of using his talent, he's wasting his life doing labor work. Will has no reply to Sean's words and quickly asks to leave. One day, while working at a construction site, Chuckie finds out about Will's breakup and tells him that he has the chance to make his life better. Chuckie admits he's not capable of landing a great job, but Will is talented, yet he's slowly ruining himself by working with them and wasting his life. Chuckie warns that if Will keeps destroying his life just because he's hiding behind his fake comfort zone, then it won't just be Will's failure, but also theirs, and if that happens, he'll kill him himself. His words force Will to reflect deeply. Since Will no longer wanted to work on the math research, Professor Lambeau was furious and even considered failing him in the therapy evaluation, so he would be sent back to jail. But Sean stops him, explaining that because of the abuse Will suffered in childhood, his mind has been severely affected, making him afraid to trust anyone or let anyone get close to his heart, as everyone he had ever trusted eventually hurt him and broke his faith. So Sean refuses to let the professor destroy him like that. Sean explains that Will is using avoidance as a defense mechanism. Before anyone can abandon or hurt him, he abandons them first to avoid the pain that might follow. That is why Will has been alone for 20 years, afraid to build deep relationships or rely on anyone. Sean believes that before building a career, Will desperately needs to form a strong emotional bond with someone he can open up to and live honestly. At this moment, Will arrives and, having overheard everything from the other side of the door, realizes that Sean truly understands and supports him. When an argument breaks out between Sean and the professor, Will opens the door, causing Professor Lambeau to leave the room. Sean then looks through Will's file, which contains pictures proving the child abuse he suffered, and he asks Will if he has ever truly processed these feelings. Sean then opens up about his own past, saying his alcoholic father would often come home drunk, ready to beat someone, and Sean used to provoke him so he could protect his mother and younger brother. Will responds by saying that in the orphanage, his foster father would place a belt, a stick, and a wrench on the table and tell him to choose one. And while most kids would pick the belt, Will always chose the wrench, so the man would let out all his anger at once. Based on all of Will's therapy sessions, Sean completes his final report, and Will assumes that he has failed the evaluation and will soon be sent to jail. He asked Sean what he wrote in the report, whether he mentioned attachment disorder or fear of abandonment, and also tells him that he has separated from Skylar. Hearing this, Sean understands that Will is now completely alone and emotionally broken from the inside. Sean gently tells him to listen carefully, reminding him that everything that happened to him in the past was not his fault. Will casually says, "Okay," but Sean continues, saying he still doesn't understand that none of it was his fault. Sean knows Will trusts no one but him, so he tries to break his emotional wall by repeatedly assuring him that it wasn't his fault. As Sean slowly moves closer, Will becomes uncomfortable and tries to push him away, but eventually he breaks down, hugs Sean tightly, and cries uncontrollably, receiving the kind of fatherly love he never had before. This becomes the first time in his life that he cries in someone's arms, an emotional moment beyond words. Later, with Professor Lambeau's reference, Will joins a company, and during his last session, he tells Sean about his new job. Sean, about to leave for a vacation, gives Will his office number, and Will thanks him sincerely, as Sean wishes him good luck for the future. The next day is Will's birthday, and his friends gift him an old car. Will drives straight to Sean's house and leaves a letter, asking Sean to tell Professor Lambeau he's sorry because he has to go see a girl. Sean understands that just like he once skipped a big game to be with the love of his life, Will has now left the job to go after Skylar, because jobs can come later, but true love only comes once in a lifetime. Sean feels genuinely happy for Will, knowing that he has finally healed and is now ready to live a normal, complete life. And with that, this story comes to an end.